Boss rushes are often some of my favorite sections of a video game, and the Kirby series has some of my favorites. Most of the series is generally consistent with the rest areas, healing, and more, but I still have a few issues with these. This is where the ultimate choice comes in. This mode is all about your options and customization, the ability to use any character in the cast, changing your difficulty to suit you, even doing something as minor as switching between Kirby's ability hats or his allies. With the introduction of Soul Melter EX in the final update, I was extremely excited to see what would happen. Soul Melter was originally the hardest difficulty, and before the Wave 2 update, I completed this with all characters because I was craving more. The original one was insanely fun to do, but the difficulty became too easy after a while and it wasn't enjoyable afterwards. This is definitely an exaggeration, but it kind of felt like I was playing a movie instead of actually, well, playing the video game. This is why I love the true arenas in the previous Kirby games way more than original Soul Melter. But with Soul Melter EX, it made Star Allies feel complete for me, and it also became my favorite Kirby game because of its inclusion. It borrows a lot of things from the previous true arenas, but it feels like it fleshes them out way more. So, I'm ESF1, and this is the gratifying design of Soul Melter EX. The way that this entire sequence is structured is very similar to the previous boss rushes in the series, with each fight being divided by a room to get your healing items. But this time around, the fights themselves aren't randomized, and are always in the same order. This can definitely seem a bit decisive in terms of how they're ordered, but I like it more because it allows me to strategize, and it really depends on the character you pick. These bosses are designed with the game's pre-established elemental effects in mind. So for example, you could place Adeline and Ribbon and do major damage in the Krakow fight, but you can instead get healed in the parallel DDD fight if you use Rick Kinenku's water attacks. This makes runs as each character feel very different from one another because you have to prioritize which moves would be better suited for the situation you're in. Another thing I love about the character roster is how the difficulty is managed. Each character has a very different run from one another because of their movesets and the way they attack in each fight. Because of this, the replay value is through the roof. And yeah, a lot of characters can just straight up go unga bunga with a lot of their moves, but there's also other characters that have really high skill ceilings with how you're supposed to learn them, so it still balances itself out. Now, I feel I should give a highlight to the bosses themselves for a while. I mean, it is based around them after all. They're all variations of fights you encounter throughout the other modes, of course, but when battled in an environment with less safety nets throughout, they become way more intimidating. Hell, they even managed to make Twin Bugsy terrifying. Like, almost every other character struggles in this fight. It's so easy to lose or run early because of these two dang bugs. Speaking of that duo again, they really act as this game's skill check for this part of the gauntlet, and they foreshadow how hard future fights will get. So you really have to step up your own game, or simply choose another character you're better at if you want to get past them in the first place. I really love how this fight does not pull its punches whatsoever. Because of how all of the fights have very learnable patterns, every death feels like your own mistake to learn from as well. The final 6 fights are what I feel makes this boss rush so special. Parallel Meta Knight and Parallel DDD feel like entirely different fights with how much more aggressive they are and how they really test your dodging and reaction skills a lot more than the earlier fights. And often with how unrelenting these fights are, they can sometimes feel overwhelming. But I feel that's a good thing, because it really makes you need to learn in order to even proceed. Moving on, Corrupt Highness feels a bit more tame compared to some of the other fights, but when you still have to be more careful because of the elemental splash attacks and all the range they have, it's tough. Multiple new elemental interactions also appear where you can stop the traps from the puppet mages while they're slammed into the ground, and you can also destroy the ice barrage before it starts. Honestly, my only problem with this fight is that the friend circle mimic attack that they use, it's super underwhelming. Like, all you need to do is just hold ZR as most characters and just press left or right, and you don't take any damage. That's all you need to do, just dodge roll at the right time, boom, easy. And to certain characters, you can just hold block and you literally cannot get hit. It's that easy to dodge. So it's so underwhelming, and it's sad to see that it's like that, but other than that, it's a really great boss fight. So, remember how I said that the Bugsy Bros were going to be foreshadowing the future fights? Well, there's one that really shows that fact. These are the three Mage Sisters, and they're definitely out for blood now. This fight is absolutely raw to the core, and I love it. The attacks can be extremely overwhelming if you don't know which way they'll go. The damage they can do is astronomical, and some of the combo attacks they can do are simply brutal. It feels amazing to see a Kirby boss fight go so no holds barred with a fight like this. Even their attack at the beginning of Phase 2 can half your HP or straight up kill you at certain points. But it's also really fair at the same time, and that's why I love this boss fight so much. I honestly don't know much else to say about this fight other than the fact that it's a fever dream. Like, compared to other Kirby fights, I've never felt such an intense feeling of being overwhelmed in a good way, where it's just such a exciting feeling. And not even the Galactonite fights made me feel the same way either. Like, that's the sheer difference of it all. And the fact that it's also able to use the same three characters that you fought before, with their same movesets and all, but it still feels like an entirely unique fight, that's honestly an amazing achievement for a game to even be able to do that. Morpho Knight EX honestly feels like a fight that I don't have much to say about either, mostly because his fight can be beaten with a similar strategy to Parallel Meta Knight. The major difference is that the hitboxes of his attacks are just way bigger, and the teleportation is extremely tricky to deal with. Like, I'm just like, why do you have a lingering hitbox just chilling right over there? You don't have to do that. But he has a really fun fight anyway, and he's insanely intimidating. Like, you can't skip that cutscene at the beginning of his fight for a reason. He invokes that fear into you right at the beginning. And he has such a cool design, in my opinion, that I'm always excited to see him when he's on screen. Okay, we're finally at the final battle, and I've been rambling about how cool these characters are and how happy I am that they want to destroy every cell in my body, but this one's different. I've fanboyed a lot already, but this is the true destroyer of worlds. And good highness, I can't gawk at this one enough because, wow, this is hype. The pure terror this fight gives is just so intoxicating. It might just be similar to your typical shooter type of final fight that most of the modern Kirby games have been going with, and it may be pretty easy a lot of the time, but the thrill from the presentation alone is something that never gets old. The way you can cancel out certain elemental attacks that Void Termina does with his two swords is such a cool detail as well. The heart of Void Termina is the unique type of phase in the battle because it originally wasn't that memorable to me at first. But the thing that really makes you remember this part is destroying the Rainbow Rune to get the Maximum Tomato, which has saved quite a few of my runs, and this honestly is the only real big thing I'm torn about on this boss rush. Yeah, it's a nice get out of jail free card, but it's one of the final boss fights, which makes it feel a bit too free. And honestly, it kind of ruins the tension a lot of the time. The next phase ups the tension again with Void Termina's winged form. And I really like how you can strategize a lot more here to save time. It's done by destroying the eyes at specific sections, and you can do this multiple times to speed up the phase. It feels so satisfying to do this and rack up damage quickly to get to the last eye. Talking about that, the final eye section is pure eye candy. The Master Crown even being on screen is such a nice reference by itself, but the beams are just so exciting to dodge, even though they often just boil down to holding left, right, or double jumping. On to the final phase. Void is simply amazing. I love how every bit of his moveset references past final bosses from the series. It's such a cool throwback. I can't overstate how much the music also makes this fight feel so much more intense at the same time. The way the piano hits all of a sudden got me so emotional when I heard it for the first time. I really could make an entire video rambling about how much I love this fight alone. And as a huge Kirby fan, this is definitely my favorite fight and moment from the entire series as a whole. It feels like such a beautiful culmination of everything before it, and I genuinely don't know how to do it justice. There's just so much polish, love, and attention to detail put into this single fight. This has easily become my favorite boss rush in any video game, and it feels so sadly overlooked despite the immense amount of detail throughout this entire mode. There are definitely some flaws that hold this mode back a bit, but I still wanted to give the positives of it some love too, and that's why this video was made. It has so much replay value, and honestly, I'm still playing it with different characters I never really used that often. It does an amazing job with variety in that way, where it makes you change your playstyle and adapt too. I'm so happy I was able to give this mode at least a little bit of a spotlight, and I definitely want to give more Kirby content a spotlight as well, because it's a franchise that I'm super passionate about, so I would love to put more stuff out there. Anyway, that'll do for this video. I have a major Kingdom Hearts video planned that I'm working on right now, so it'll take a while, but it might be split by an intermission video or two as well, so I won't be leaving you guys hanging. With all that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe to support my videos right when they release, or not, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!